Please be seated. I'm not sure whether it's better for the live stream for me to be here or there, but there's lots of sunlight in my eyes. So, one of the rules always told to people who work in campus ministry or youth ministry is that if you cook it, they will come. We're always told, have pizza, bring cookies, make sure you have food. If there's no food, they won't come. The Catholic Church, one block away from us, has a feeding program for CU students, and they love to say that they feed over 100 students every Sunday. And they do it at camps, a variety. And the reason is that you think if you give them food, real food, the kind you eat and swallow into your stomach, that will somehow, first of all, get you there, and once we've got you in the door, we can sort of give you a little bit of Jesus and see if it sticks. I wonder what Jesus would have said about our campus ministry and youth ministry. I mean, we wouldn't want to starve you guys either. But notice how he says, you've come to get your fill of the loaves. You've come because you got your fill of the loaves. But I'm telling you to look for another kind of bread, and to feed another kind of hunger, and to slake another kind of thirst that you're not really paying attention to. They say, give us that fancy bread that fell from heaven like Moses did. And he says, no, all you have to do is believe that I am that one. Now, I read a commentary on this gospel that gave me pause, I have to say. And what this commentator said is that we, Christians, American Christians, are doing a lousy job because we have given people a sense of the church, that the church is a place where you come to be fed in some particular way, not the food of Christ, but another way. How many times have I heard people say, I come for the great music. I come for the great sermon. I come because we do great works of social justice. I come because this matches my political ideology. I come because. And this commentator shakes his finger at us for doing that, right? He says the problem with that is that is not the reason we come to church. We come to church for only one reason, to equip the saints. And if you think about it, if you want to feed the hungry, which this church does almost every day of the week, by the way, other institutions do it better. Boulder Bridge House has it down. We just help them. If you want to be politically active to bring about your version of Christ's kingdom of the world, there are groups that do it better and quite effectively. We just help a little bit. If you want great music, yes, we have lovely music and a lovely choir, but the fact is there are symphonies and great rock artists coming here. We don't provide, and also other places cook better. Except for Mark Biggers, other places cook better. We don't meet those needs the way other segments of society do. We are meant to meet one specific need, which is to feed people with the knowledge of Christ's saving power in our lives and in the world, and then to grow into the stature of Christ. The letter to the Ephesians says that. It says that we have been given grace like manna falling from heaven. The faith that we feel, at least faith enough to come here, is like manna coming from heaven, just covering us, feeding us, to equip the saints. I want you to remember that word because you're going to hear a lot of it this fall. Equip the saints. I found out something interesting. The word used for equip in this letter is used only once in the entire Bible. It's katartismos, not to be mistaken with catharsis. It's not that word. Katartismos. And it doesn't mean to supply with or to give people stuff in order to do the job. It's not about picking up skills or knowledge. It means to create, to restore, to reconcile, to prepare, and in its most literal use in Greek, to set the broken bone. That's the word Paul used. Paul was an extremely educated and literary writer of Greek. He knew that it meant set the bone, restore, reconcile, and so on. It does not mean give people stuff. that makes you look at it entirely differently. The purpose of church is to fix our brokenness. The purpose of Christ's coming is to fix our brokenness and to fix the world's brokenness. And when you look at it that way, it changes your whole view of what it means to equip the saints, right? All of a sudden you say, oh, and how does that happen in church or in our lives, indeed? Well, interestingly, it happens through resolving conflict. Every single letter that Paul or Paul's minions wrote were written to churches, the church in Ephesus, the church in Rome, and so on, to address conflicts. Here's what's happening in Corinth, you're blowing it. Here's what's happening in Ephesus, you're blowing it. Here's what's happening in Rome, you're blowing it. And he talks about trying to find, as he says in Ephesians, the bonds of peace, to maintain the bonds of peace. But notice how Paul maintains the bonds of peace. He does not go around saying to everybody, you are a wonderful, 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 wonderful person. You're all doing so well. He says, here's the problem. Let's work on being better at this. The way he suggests that they maintain the bonds of peace is by addressing the apparent sources of conflict in their midst. There is a Buddhist nun who wrote about this very issue for the Center for Action and Contemplation in New Mexico. If you know anything of the Franciscan Richard Rohr, he brings in all sorts of holy people from around the world. And this Buddhist nun wrote about conflict as the way we find communion and unity in a community. So what she says is that it's only by rubbing up against one another, and it could be in our marriages, in our families, with our children, our parents, with our neighbors, with our people who live in our same county or country. Community can be anywhere. It is in rubbing up against our neighbors and addressing the conflicts, the inevitable conflicts that occur, that we grow. And in fact, it's the only way we grow. Now, that doesn't sound like fun, does it? I can't imagine my saying to you, go out, have some conflict. You'll grow. But Jesus was constantly in conflict in the Gospels. Conflict with the Pharisees and the scribes. Conflict with his own disciples. He called Peter his favorite, Satan. He was mad at them because he was trying to get us reconciled, restored, healed in our relationship with God, and he wasn't seeing it happen the way he wanted to happen, so he was in conflict. I'll give you an example, and it's a kind of a churchy example of my growing through conflict. I was an EFM mentor, and I was a co-mentor, and I had been invited to be a mentor at another church, to leave the group I was in and to go mentor another one by a friend of mine who knew us both. And what I didn't know was she was trying to bring me along to temper the other EFM mentor, who I had not met yet. And it became clear after a few weeks that she was very annoying. We would always agree about what we were going to do. This was our plan. And then I would say, here's the plan. And then she'd go, no, that's not a good idea. In front of everyone, no, that's not a good idea. We're going to do this instead. So I started to get very resentful, and I realized I'm going to have to say something, hopefully with humility, gentleness, and patience, as Paul advises, but I wasn't feeling any of those. So I said, could we meet before the next meeting? And she said, sure. So we meet, and we start with some pleasantries, and then I say, I need to tell you that I've been having some trouble with some things you're doing, and it's making me feel undermined. And I described the behavior, and she said, I'm so sorry, I wasn't doing that intentionally, but I now see that that was a problem, and I will work on that. And then she said, you've also been annoying me. And I was shocked. In any conflict, isn't always, it's the other person's problem, right? You're 99.9% right, and they are wrong. You're going to give them that 0.1%, but so she described the behavior that was annoying in me. And I said, I'm very sorry, I didn't intend to do that, and I didn't know I was doing it, and I will stop doing it. And then she said, I think it might be a good idea if we met and prayed together before every before every meeting. And I said, that's a great idea. So we did that. I grew, and the funny thing is, I don't remember what she was doing that annoyed me, and I don't remember what I was doing that annoyed her, because we both stopped doing what we were doing, and we healed, we reconciled, we were restored. I learned. And it was through humility, finding out, I'm annoying. Gentleness, she was very gentle with me, and patience, our patience with one another as we learn to be better partners with one another. I know you've experienced this in marriages, with siblings, with parents, with children, with grandchildren, with neighbors, with coworkers. It happens in every relationship. But the odd truth is that we grow when we bump into a conflict with somebody, and through humility, gentleness, and patience, we are able to learn something about ourselves and to change and to grow. When we talk about equipping the saints, it doesn't mean just making somebody a Christian. That's the creating part of create, restore, reconcile, and so on. It also means growing into our stature with Christ. One of the things that we rarely talk about in our Christian walk is that we're not expected simply to believe in Jesus as the Christ. We're also meant to be more and more like him as we grow. That the equipping, the restoring, is restoring our image as the image of God, burnishing ourselves so that bit by bit, we become more and more Christ-like in our lives. And then we all become saints. It sounds not doable, but if you look at the lives of saints, they were perfectly normal people who did just that and have become examples for all of us. But the next saint is sitting right next to you, and it might be the most annoying person in your life. Amen.